so now we have our nice foreground of those mountains. Now let's bring back the mountains behind, and now you can see they are nicely cut between two layers, so we'll be able to project those separately. I'm just gonna extend this a little bit, because since we will have a little bit of parallax, well, we still need to have enough coverage, otherwise it's not gonna work. So I'm just using the clone stamp tool, doing really basic operations. I don't need to have a lot more extra coverage, so I don't need to extend this a lot, just a little bit. So just using the clone stamp tool will work. And as you can see, it's actually pretty crude. It's not like super precise. I'm just avoiding like too obvious repetitions. And if I'm lacking information to clone stamp, then maybe I will bring in another photo, and I will probably do that later, I think. So once again, it's always the same process. Repeat it once again. So once you've understood the process, it's just a matter of repeating it and practicing it until you have it down. I'm actually not exactly sure that those bright, almost white rocks will work perfectly. I'm still gonna try, but at this point I'm not exactly sure this is gonna work. I think the contrast might be actually too big here, that we might need a darker element behind those trees. Otherwise it might be not really pleasant to the eye, I guess. Lowering a little bit the layer so we have more coverage. Okay, so I'm not sure about those white rocks, but we'll see later. When I'm sort of like, I would say not stuck, but almost, I try just to keep moving forward. In this case, for example, we can take a look at this right mountain, and I really like it because, to be honest, it pretty much already works right away. Not exactly sure I need to do anything about this one. It's a really minor values adjustment, but that's pretty much it. So I'm just reorganizing everything now into my layers. My folders. That's something that you really want. Okay, so now we can maybe add this sunlight here. So I'm importing the same photo I had used for this temporary backplate that I put in my 3D scenes to have those reflections in the water. Except this time I'm just gonna slightly integrate this a bit more. You want to be really careful when you do something like this, because the plate that we are using doesn't have a sun that is actually that low or that yellowish. So in this case, I know it's gonna sort of work simply because it's mostly overcast. So and the sun piercing through the clouds like that will only lit a bit of the image. In this case, it's gonna be the CG that I've already lit with the sun. So I would say that in this case, I mean, as I've said, I'm sort of breaking the rules, because technically this photo doesn't 100% match the plate when it comes like to the actual physical world. If you were on location where the base photos were taken, well, the sun didn't look like this. But this is where you can, I guess, cheat. You just need to know the rules, I think, before breaking them. That's what I would say. In this case, I just know it's gonna work. With the way those mountains are lit, it's mostly overcast, and I don't see why we couldn't have the sun piercing just at one point. I just need to do some slight color corrections, and I will need to, for example, in the background, adjust this fog. And I'm using the background mountain that is in my new photo that I just imported with the sun to use as a reference. So I'm painting some shadows in those mountains, because I want those mountains in the background to be mostly in the darkness, I mean completely covered in haze. Okay, let's try to look for another photo here that I could use. Just to add more depth to the image, so to make more transitional elements, mountains. Because as I've said, I didn't really like those white rocks here. So I want to try to add something else, so the contrast between our CG hill is not too strong with like the very bright background. Once again here, same kind of boring edge work. I'm not completely sure at this point that it's gonna work. This is why I'm still kind of loose when I do those edges. I just want to try to see if this photo could potentially work, but at this stage I'm not exactly sure. I mean, most of what we have already works quite nicely, I think. Just want to improve whatever I can improve. Gonna extend very quickly a little bit this mountain here, using once again the clone stamp tool. So I'm staying still really rough for the moment. I mostly want to see if this is gonna work or not. One thing you can also do, so what I just did here, to control the atmospheric perspective, is to add color overlay layer, and you just pick the haze color, and you play with the opacity. Okay, so I don't think those white rocks will work. I think something like another photo that I have here will probably work a lot better. Just doing first like some slight haze adjustment here. Trying to blend everything a bit more together. So I'm just color picking some values in the sky and painting over those background mountains. Here we go. I think something like this will work probably a lot better. Because I didn't like those white rocks. It was just too distracting for the eye, I think. Overall, I would say the ground is pretty dark. So we have a bit of snow, but overall the rocks are quite dark. So kind of want to avoid those gray rocks. So I'm going to get rid of them. Okay, so first what I think I want to do is to clean up a little bit the background, just so I can see better where I'm going. Because at this point I have my background layer of mountains that is pretty much locked. I'm sure I'm going to use this. So what I'm going to do now is to clean this up a little bit, because here, as you can see, I don't know why, but we're missing part of the photo. So I'm going to grab the original photo, the safe copy that I had somewhere here on my canvas. Just gonna get rid of this crap here. Don't know exactly how that happened. Okay, let's start again from the safe copy that I had of the layer. So I'm gonna clean up this a little bit. Yeah, probably made a mistake with one of my masks. Nothing to worry about, just a bit of painting to fix it, and it's done. So now I'm really trying to make those mountains sit perfectly with the sky. So I'm color picking the values and colors of my sky, and I'm also cleaning up the edges a little bit. I will need some slight color adjustment, because right now in my sky, I would say there's too much cyan compared to the ground, where it's more going towards blue-red. And that might seem abstract to you, but the more you work, the more experience you have, the more you'll be able to see the colors. So let me try to see if I can blend some God rays here with the background. In a very subtle way, though. Something like this should work, I think. Well, almost pretty good already. Cleaning up those edges slightly. The edge is something really important that I think sometimes gives away the Photoshop thing. I mean, the more the element is going to be in the background, the more details you need in the edges. So you definitely want to spend enough time cleaning up those edges. And you can also use, like I did here, the defringe tool, which is always useful. You can use some selection tools also, but in this case I will just need to go in with the 1 pixel brush and clean this by hand. And already I can see this is starting to feel, I think, a lot better. You can see that those mountains are starting to sit in the background a lot better. You can really feel like the sky now is becoming part of this matte painting. Painting some more fog here. Right now there's still too much red in those mountains compared to the sky, but I will adjust that later. What I can do is use this trick of the color overlay effect, like I talked about earlier. Right now it's still way too bright, but I'm still going to use it just to make, as I said, it's clear separation between the grounds. So you can just apply the same color overlay to every mountain layer. Then as you move towards the camera, to the foreground, will just diminish the opacity of that layer, the color overlay layer. Okay, so it's not too bad. I would say that so far the exposure is probably off. Like those background mountains are a bit washed out. But I am not too concerned about that at the moment. Right now, still, I just want to make sure everything is clearly defined here. I will adjust the amount of haze in those values later.